Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News on 3FM. My name is Beatrice Adu. The news is also live on Kasmi 107.1 FM and across the world at 3news.com. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Minority in Parliament demands reversal of military deployment to enforce a grain export ban. Meanwhile, Africa Center for Security and Counter-Terrorism calls on government to ensure accountability in drought relief fund usage. Also coming up, National Peace Council holds crunch meeting with youth organizers of political parties in a bid to foster peace ahead of December polls. Much later, with over 60,000 children on Accra's street, we explore the streetism crisis and the government's commitment to tackling the menace. That's a special report for you. Thank you very much for joining us today. Now, this afternoon, the minority in Parliament has issued a strong warning against any potential deployment of the country's military to border regions, which is intended to curb the export of Ghana's grains. Earlier this week, during a news conference on the government's response to the drought affecting 8 regions of the country, the Defence Minister Dominic Nitiwul announced plans to use the military to enforce a ban on grain exports. However, NDC MPs argue that this action resembles a strategy used by the government in 2020, which they claim was intended to intimidate eligible voters in opposition strongholds. Our correspondent Komla Kluche has been following up on this. He'll be joining us very shortly with some details. But ahead of that, the Africa Center for Security and Counter-Terrorism has also called on Parliament, civil society organizations, international development partners and security agencies to ensure the responsible, effective and secure use of drought relief funds. This call from the centre follows the Finance Minister Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam's request for the approval of some 500 million Ghana cedis from the contingency fund to provide relief and mitigate the effect of the recent dry spell affecting 8 regions of Ghana. The funds are intended for implementing the emergency response program to address the impending food security crisis caused by the dry spell in these regions. The Africa Center for Security and Counter-Terrorism has raised concerns about the lack of a thorough needs assessment, among other issues. Emmanuel Kutin is the Executive Director of the African Center for Security and Counter-Terrorism. He joins us live on the phone. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your cherished listeners.
Parliament will need to certainly approve this request and its implementation will be closely monitored, at least by the media. What are the specific concerns of your organization regarding this process?
Well, thank you. Like I mentioned in the press release, there's no doubt that there's an urgent need for relief for these affected people in the northern part of Ghana. But there are some critical concerns we have as an organization, and that is on the back of similar emergency reliefs this government have undertaken. And what comes to mind really is the COVID-19 relief program. Now, what we know is that before you can give somebody help, you must know the condition of the person. So we want to know what need assessment government have done. And the rush for Parliament to release this money only raised several other concerns. We are also afraid that there's no transparency and accountability in the whole process, because I've not heard of any stakeholder engagement. And don't forget, government does not live as an island. Government has stakeholders. We have civil society organizations, international partners, among others, and Parliament. So government cannot just take a unilateral decision and rush into doing the kind of things they do. Let's just suppose this with the Akusobo spillage. Why is government still not meeting the needs of the victims of that spillage? They make the case that they are doing need assessments, they are validating data and stuff like that. Is that not the case? So how is this one different from the Akusombo spillage? So we have the firm belief that, yes, there's an urgent need, but we must do things properly.
As a CSO, I suppose that, you're telling us this because you're interested in how the funds will be disbursed. Have you written, for instance, to the Agric Ministry to find out the processes and whether or not a group like yourself will be allowed to monitor or be part of it?
If you look at the knee-jerk behavior of the government, so to speak, you cannot even make such inputs. Look at the issue of they deploying military over our borders to stop the exportation of grains. Where are the grains? We don't even export these grains to begin with. And I think that the military can refuse an unlawful order. I'm just looking forward to the generals in charge now to refuse this unconstitutional order from the Minister of Agric and that of the Defense. As far as the security think tank we are aware, there have not been any executive instrument before cabinet or before parliament. So such orders are unconstitutional. We don't live in a banana republic. We live in a democracy, for God's sake. And secondly, government have thwarted their one district, one dam project to be a success. If indeed these dams were a success, we wouldn't be having drought. The main rationale was for irrigation programs. Is that not it?
You just mentioned...
where are the dams? Just allow me to end here with the third point. Look, Ghana is a signatory to the ECOWAS protocol, and government cannot take the unilateral decision it took to ban the exportation of grains into other West African countries. If they want to give reprisal countermeasures, Ghana will be the loser. So I think that we need to do the right things, engage all the relevant stakeholders, and make sure that we get this thing right once and for all.
Engage all the relevant stakeholders. I just asked you whether you had tried, and your response was that we know this government. Have you tried and you were denied any information or access to what kind of information you need?
This government have a penchant for one thing.
Have you tried? That's the question.
Yes, we write letters, they don't even respond to them. And this is not the first of its kind. If you ask the National Security Outfit, for instance, we've written countless letters to them over things we think if we do it right as stakeholders, it will benefit the country. You don't get responses. I dare say that this is not how a proper functioning democracy works.
Let me find out, my final question to you. How do you think the government can address this issue with the insufficient funds it has right now?
I think that we need an independent oversight committee, one. We need to conduct a comprehensive needs assessment, two. We need to implement a transparent fund management system and ensure that we don't have partisan distribution of these relief items, given that we are only 98 days away from elections. And we must also institute regular independent audits. And above all, we must make sure the affected communities are engaged, and we must listen to their needs and what they want, and not imposing what we feel they need. And we must also develop a long-term resilience strategy. More often than not, when there is a problem, we take knee-jerk short-term solutions. We don't plan medium long-term. I heard the Minister of Agri saying they are going to build a silo costing over $70 million. For Christ's sake, that is duplication of duties. What is the role of the buffer stock? If you look at the Constitution, what was the intention of the creation of the buffer stock? And secondly, let's also juxtapose this. The cost of deploying the military around our borders. If we use that money in helping our farmers, is it not better?
We'll have to end it here. Thank you very much. Emmanuel Koting, Executive Director, African Center for Security and Counterterrorism. I was telling you earlier that the minority members in Parliament are against the Defense Ministry deploying soldiers to the borders of the country to enforce this ban on exporting grains. Listen to James Ogoga, who is a ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament.
The minority takes note of the rollout of measures by the government to address the potentially devastating impact of the dry spell on food security in our country, the deployment of the military to our borders to ostensibly perform the task of the enforcement of a ban on the exportation of grain raises several questions and suspicions. Neither the Minister for Food and Agriculture nor the Minister for Defense, who announced the ban and deployment of the military, adduced any evidence to establish the inability of our immigration and customs services to enforce the prohibition in question. The minority recalls that in the run-up to the 2020 presidential and parliamentary elections, the Akufo-Addo-Bawumia government heavily deployed the country's military, particularly in the Volta and Oti regions, as part of a carefully orchestrated strategy that scared eligible voters from exercising.
And you have James Agaga. He's a ranking member, minority member on the Defence and Interior Committee of Parliament. Komla Kliche is monitoring this for us. He joins us live on the line. Komla, what more can you tell us?
Well, the position of the minority, they intend to hold on to firmly and further expose the government on, alleged intentions to prevent supporters of their party who are across the border from entering. A similar thing played out in 2020 where people were classified as foreigners and were not allowed to vote. This time around, the NDC says they would not agree to any position whatsoever. If it has to do with the prevention of people from doing exportations and all that of grains and food items, the immigration and customs are well equipped to do this. They do not need the military to enforce this. And so the military should stay out, and that all of this is just a ploy to, so to speak, not to allow supporters of their party to come in and vote during the December elections. And so they will use whatsoever means to prevent this.
Thank you very much, Komla Kliche. He's our senior parliamentary correspondent. Let's get some more reactions. To Northern Region correspondent Christopher Marco has been engaging some farmers on the government's intervention. He also joins us live on the phone. Chris, first of all, how are the farmers receiving the news from the government regarding the interventions?
Yeah, so Beatrice, the farmers, even though they commend government for the decision to intervene in this time of their predicament, they are also expressing some concerns about the fact that some interventions have come in the past, like the planting for food and jobs, fertilizer that government has brought to, as it were, support farmers. But they, the farmers, are not beneficiary of this intervention because some politicians have taken over the fertilizer, and so all they need is that government should come out with a strategy that it will use to, as it were, support them, because they are raising concerns of transparency in this particular arrangement that government is coming up with, because they have witnessed some issues in the past that some interventions have come and they go into the wrong hands of people, and so this time they want government to come clear as to how it wants to do it and who is going to lead this particular intervention. Let's take a listen to what some of the farmers have been saying.
This funding that government is bringing out to support farmers is very good, but the problem is that sometimes this kind of all governments are trying to support farmers, but if something like that comes, it goes into hands of unscrupulous politicians or other people that will sit on it and couldn't get to where it's supposed to.
And you just had that one farmer. Christopher is still on the line with us. Christopher, let's wrap up very quickly. I know you visited some farms some hours ago. Can you tell us how those farms are doing?
Yes, so the farms, as it stands now, some of them are picking up because the rains that the region is beginning to record is helping the plants to pick up from the drought that affected the plants earlier. And as we speak now, some of them are resorting to buying some seeds that use some 70 days to mature. And so they are still plowing, hoping that the rains will extend for a little while for them to be able to go through the farming season successfully.
Thank you very much, Christopher Marco. He is our Northern Region correspondent. We stay on issues related to land and the environment, and small-scale gold miners in Ghana have for many years been using mercury to extract the precious mineral. Though a toxic chemical, the miners say the inaccessibility of mercury-free technology in the country has compelled them to use it. Studies have shown that chronic respiratory diseases are common in mining areas where there are high exposure of mercury. Now, the Environmental Protection Agency under the Planet Gold project has begun engaging miners on the need to minimize or even completely stop the use of mercury to extract gold. And we'll be connecting very shortly to our Ashanti region correspondent, Ibrahim Abubakar, who has been following this story for us. But it's some 16 minutes past the hour of 12. This is the Midday News on Sri FM at 92.7, and this is your election headquarters. Let's bring you election command center. Let's bring you some political issues. And with less than 100 days to election 2024, the National Peace Council is meeting with youth leaders of the various political parties on the need to promote peace. Noble Crosby Annan will be joining us very shortly from there. But let's listen to George Sapon, who's been one of the guests speaking at this event.
These ones are sponsored by big nations with big money behind them. And their purpose essentially is to bring down the centers of social stability in a democracy. So they just rely on just 3 key strategies: gaslighting intellectuals, weaponizing ego explosion, and exploiting nationalism. And I'm just going to show you just quickly how this works. First and foremost, they target the institutions of stability: National Peace Council, Electoral Commission, NCCE, the church leaders, the traditional leaders. The idea is to undermine their influence, and they do not generate inauthentic materials. It is critical material that people are putting out on these people that they use algorithms to promote. So material that can create conflict, material that can undermine the institutions that deal with the conflict, is what they help to go viral.
And you heard George Sapon. He's the executive director of the NMC. Now, still on politics, the National Democratic Congress in the Nandom constituency of the Upper West region claims that it has discovered over 200 names of non-natives and non-residents in the voter register. Most of these names, the party alleges, are aliens of Burkinabe extraction. Speaking at a press conference in Nandom, the constituency youth organizer of the NDC demanded that the names be expunged from the register.
Our monitoring teams have gathered substantial evidence indicating that Honorable Ambrose Derry, the Member of Parliament for Nandom constituency, working in cahoots with a nefarious gang of his acolytes and some unscrupulous elements in the EC, led by Mr. Elvis Kokar, has been involved in a hideous scheme to illegally transfer approximately 21 individuals into the voter register. Our crack investigations team has also discovered that over 200 names of non-natives and non-residents have suspiciously added to the voter register through dubious means.
The NDC also accused the Member of Parliament and the EC officials of plans to illegally transfer about 21 names onto the constituency register, despite the expiration of the transfer window.
One, we are calling on the EC to expunge the names of these non-residents, non-Ghanaian from the register. Two, we are still calling on the EC the security services, and all necessary stakeholders to ensure that these 21 names that the MPP and the MP of not the Honorable Ambrosari are planning to still transfer their names onto the register. This must not happen. These names must not be found in the register. 3, we are still calling on all the necessary stakeholders, the chiefs, the security services, and all those who matter, to ensure that we have a very clean elections.
Well, the Municipal EC Directorate has denied these allegations. Let's return to a story about the Peace Council meeting the youth leaders of political parties. Noble Crosby Annan is monitoring this for us. He joins us live on the line. Noble, we just heard the Executive Director of the NMC there speak to us earlier. Can you tell us more about what's happening there?
Well, essentially, this is a meeting that has brought together almost all the youth leaders of various political parties in the country. You know that the youth, they make up a larger chunk of the voting population, with also that number, quite a larger number of that also representing first-time voters. Now, that being said, there's the need for peace going into the election. So the various stakeholders in the peace industry and the electoral process, they have convened this meeting and to talk to the youth leaders, because if good or bad, it will start from the youth leaders, and it will start from the youth because they are a larger representation. That essentially is what is happening here. The conversations are being centered on malinformation, misinformation, and disinformation, and the impact it could have going into the 2024 elections, essentially.
What was the reaction of these political party youth leaders?
Well, they are open to the conversations on peace and commitments towards peace. But they do not want peace to walk alone. They want peace to walk with fairness and justice. That is on the part of the electoral managed bodies and other key stakeholders in the electoral process. I'm talking about the Electoral Commission, the Peace Council themselves, as well as the police service, the judiciary, and all of that. They are asking for justice as well as fairness to be added to the conversations about peace.
They want peace to work with fairness and justice. Thank you very much, Noble Crosby, and bringing us an update from that meeting between the Peace Council and youth leaders of the various political parties. Meanwhile, President Akufo Addo has given his firm assurance yet that the government will do everything possible to ensure a peaceful and credible election come December 7. Addressing the 13th Biennial and 51st Conference of the Methodist Church Ghana in Kumasi, the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces said that individuals or groups which are harboring the idea of rigging the election will be left disappointed.
The Akufo-Addo-led MPP government is clear about its obligation and duty to ensure that the impending elections are conducted in an atmosphere of peace and security. And the security agencies will be alive to their responsibilities and will ensure that the free will of the Ghanaian people and their choice of national leadership will be manifest, free of violence and intimidation. I'm certain that the behavior of the Ghanaian people and their government and public authorities will put to shame all the naysayers, all the Jeremiahs, including, unfortunately,
And you heard President Akufo Addo. Let's return to our earlier story from Kumasi about illegal, or actually small-scale gold miners in Ghana having to use mercury, and that meeting going on there. Ibrahim Abubakar is monitoring this for us as well. He joins us live. Ibrahim, what more can you tell us from this event?
Well, Beatrice, when you look at the activities of most scale miners in Ghana and also even some illegal miners, you realize that they are using substantial amount of mercury in processing of their gold, and this is usually done in an unsafe and environmentally hazardous condition. And we know this is a harmful chemical, yet this is what they use in extracting their gold. Now, the use of this harmful chemical keeps rising, and when you talk to them, they will tell you that because it's cheaper and also it's easily accessible. That's how come they are using it. But then research has also revealed that a lot of health complications are being recorded in mining areas because when the mercury is vaporized, it pollutes the air and residents have to inhale it. So now they are being trained on new ways of or new technology of extracting gold without the use of mercury, so that they will be safe and also the environment will also be safe. Dr. Ishmael Kwenu is the coordinator of the small-scale miners at University of Mines and Technology. He has been sharing with us some of the findings that they've gotten from these mining communities.
Ibrahim Abubakar, we'll have to bring that later, but thank you very much. Ibrahim Abubakar is our correspondent in the Ashanti region. Streetism is gradually becoming an albatross on the neck of Ghanaians, particularly those who live in the capital city, Accra, with some estimated 61,000 children, both foreign and local, on our street. Many seem to question the interest of the state in these children. Stanley Nibleo explores this issue of the influx of child beggars in Accra in this special report.
It's sweet by sometimes it's
a bright sunny morning at the Marina Mall enclave. Active transport system has kept the environment busy and buzzing. On the shoulders of the busiest road in the area, a group of teenagers have gathered here. Some are still sleeping while a couple more are awake to a new day. For months, these children, who have migrated from different parts of the country, sometimes from the continent to the enclave, have found solace on the streets of Accra. This is despite sometimes the harsh weather conditions.
Life there is sweet by sometimes if it's rain is coming, you suffer.
Child delinquency, parental neglect, and poverty have fueled the practice over the years.
When I came here the first time, I started smoking. That addicted me to smoking and taking tramadol and all substances.
My name is Nanaya from Ashton. I have come to Accra to hustle so I can send money to my parents because they are suffering.
During the day, the boys perform menial tasks, which includes watching of windscreens of cars in traffic to earn pittance for a living.
Every day we go to work, we get money, we get plenty money.
On some occasions, they directly beg for money from passers-by. Not even the danger of being knocked down by motion vehicles would deter them.
My father is a malam. Spirit beyond to me,
my father is a malam, so no spirit can come near me because he has fortified me.
Of more concern is the informal recruitment of foreign child beggars onto the streets. The police, which is mandated to enforce the legislative instrument which criminalizes begging in Ghana, does not seem to have implemented our laws for decades, worsening the situation. This also means that players who are behind the scenes are emboldened to send more vulnerable children to the streets. Perhaps it's a thriving business for them. Child begging, according to the International Labour Organization, is a form of child labor. Some child rights advocates also hold the same view, as the practice exposes children to constant danger. Under the Beggars and Destitute Act, NLCD 390, Section 2, begging is a criminal act in Ghana, and the offenders are to be prosecuted. But this has not been the case for years in Ghana, with the country's capital city, Accra, flooded with unkempt children. The presence of these children is felt at almost every major road intersection in the capital city, from Shashin to Ghana's major airport in Accra, to Opebia, and even at the seat of government. The traffic light in front of the country's seat of government, the Jubilee House, is a spot for some Nigerian children. The Zongo Junction enclave at Medina also plays host to another set of foreign beggars with deep-rooted concerns from passers-by. But what is the position of the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection on these developments? Last year, the Executive Director of Child Rights International, Bright Appiah, facilitated the repatriation of several families of street beggars with the view of sanitizing the system. But the prevailing condition of children on streets begging for alms leaves much to be desired. Is it that the state institutions do not care, or it is business as usual to keep these children on Ghana streets? Stanley Midday, 3FM, Accra.
And that's it for the news here on 3FM. My name is Beatrice Adu. Thank you very much for joining us today. Log on to 3news.com for more news. Have a good afternoon.
It's 99 days.